I would call it, this is a deck that I would refer to as sticky, because you're just not going to be able to remove enough stuff. What?
Kefka's sticky.
Kefka's sticky. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the MTG Thoughtcast. Today, we are talking all things Final Fantasy Commander. John, have you played a Final Fantasy?
Oh, never in my life.
I certainly haven't either. We're gonna get some lovely pronunciations of names from both of us today. So I hope you'll bear with us. Yeah, it's the Lord of the Rings flashbacks again. I hope you'll bear with us through that for all of our pre-con reviews today. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. All of the things. If you want to support the channel and you want to see more content like this, you can check down below. There's some easy free YouTube There's some easy free YouTube support down below. You can give us likes, comments, and subscribes. Huge shout out to everyone who's been doing that already. If you're on Spotify, you can give us a 5-star review. This is the MTG Thoughtcast. I'm your host, Joseph Rubino. And as aforementioned, my brother across the screen or across your ears, John, how you doing today, buddy?
In the party, I'm here to take the finalist of Fantasy. You would think the first one would have been the final, right? You call your thing Final Fantasy, and then you continue on for 16 more titles. Like, gotta draw the line some way here, folks. No.
I love it when they say it's final in time. Okay, here's the pre-cons, guys. John, why don't you give us a little details about the Final Fantasy set, the pre-cons that we're going to be talking about? Hit me with some of those lovely Oracle stats, John.
Yes, indeed. We're here with the Final Fantasy set, the best-selling Magic product ever, according
on pre-order.
That is bizarre to me. You know, like, I can't fathom what it takes on just pre-orders alone to instantly become even more than Lord of the Rings. Like, yeah. I feel so ignorant and have like no clue what's even happening here. Somebody who has zero knowledge of Final Fantasy, and yet this has like staggered itself into one of the most popular sold products before it has even hit shelves yet. And that is wild to me. But what we are starting with today is the collection of 4 Commander PreCon decks that are coming outside along with the booster set. We will be discussing the booster set at a later time, but we've got ourselves 4 3-color themed Commander decks. Each one of these decks obviously built around a game mechanic, but also a game. They focused the sort of the printings of new cards and reprints with its new art, as is tradition with Universes Beyond style product. That it is, each deck has a game focus in mind.
Yeah, I actually didn't know this about Final Fantasy, but each game is its own story with completely separate characters. This whole time, I had the full belief that it was just a long-standing, continuing story, but it's not at all. It's like an anthology series.
Yeah, I think there's like a little bit of like caveat here there, because like 14 is an MMO, and it kind of pulls from lore and characters and stuff from all over. I think that's what they did with 14 in specific. It was like some like anniversary thing or whatever. But so other than that one, and then like references here or there, yeah, generally speaking, every game. I don't normally advocate for this kind of thing when talking about like for IPs and whatever, but like not too terribly long ago, the actual like PAX panel that was the debut for Final Fantasy. If you're unfamiliar with this sort of, yes, please go watch that. I did. I watched that through, and like it has been so helpful and informative to especially somebody like me who knows nothing of the franchise.
Yes, go watch that. We'll be right here.
Yeah, the whole panel they had on that. Okay, the whole panel that was there for that it was just so nice and clear and concise and informative about like, hey, what does this mean to the game and Magic as a whole? You know, where are these correlations coming through? And that's exemplified even more so like with these commander decks, like we said here, because every deck is focused on a game, they can include more of like the juice and the references to each individual title.
I'll go ahead and take us away with the first of our 4 decks here. This is a Mardu deck that is based around Final Fantasy VI, which is kind of the last of the classic games before it started going into... I think that 7 was the first one on the PlayStation.
That's correct.
So this was an SNES game that apparently is dope. People love 6. So I think they went through and picked some of the more popular of the games. And this one, just based on the characters and design, seems awesome. This is the Revival Trance PreCon. It is helmed by Terra, Herald of Hope, which is red, white, and a black for a legendary human wizard warrior. You get half your party right there. It's a 3/3 as a named ability of Trance. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you mill 2 cards and Terra gains flying until the end of turn. Second ability is whenever Terra deals combat damage to a player, you may pay 2 generic mana. When you do, you return a creature card with power 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So this is awesome. This is Alesha who smiles at death.
That one.
Just completely cracked open. It's so awesome. I've played Alesha for a long time. It's such a fun deck. I would say going into this, don't think of this as a reanimator deck. This is a graveyard recursion value deck. So importantly, you know, she gets power 3 or less from the graveyard. So there's going to be a lot of little value-y things in here that you're going to be wanting to get rid of, things that are in your graveyard that you can just kind of reanimate cheaply. This is awesome. I'm so excited to dive into this. Again, I know nothing about the game. I know nothing about these characters, but this deck is so sweet. We have our alt commander for the deck, which is Celis Rune Knight.
Sure.
This one's so cool, John. So it's 1 red, white, and a black for a legendary human wizard knight. So when Celis, it's a 4/4. When Celis enters, you discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards +1. I love wheels. Whenever 1 or more other creatures you control enter, if 1 or more of them entered from the graveyard or was cast from a graveyard, you put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. So as you're reanimating creatures, you just turbocharge your board with this, and it just comes on a wheel on a stick. Like, Celis is awesome.
Yeah, it's Cathar's Crusade from the graveyard.
Yeah, literally. It's so sick. So I will say that for the way the deck is currently built, I do think you should keep Terra in the command zone. It also, I think they did this for flavor purposes, that they've kept the main character in the command zone for all of these, and I would have trouble telling you to do anything differently. So definitely keep Terra in. Terra's also very powerful. That 3 mana, 3/3 gains flying every turn as it attacks, at the beginning of combat. It's just an evasive threat that's going to continue to fill your graveyard and then pay itself off. So I think that Terra is a better engine because it feeds into itself rather than Celis, which is a very strong card in the deck and is a really good build around for its own commander deck. As we go through this, we're just going to talk about a few of the new cards that we're excited about. So let me start off some of the new cards talking about Kefka Dancing Mad. Speaking of mad, so Kefka is 5 black and red for a 6/6 human wizard. Those who've played the game know Kefka. During your turn, Kefka has indestructible. That's just a line of text on that. Oops, indestructible. At the beginning of your end step, exile a card at random from each opponent's graveyard. You may cast any number of spells from among cards exiled this way without paying their mana costs. Then each player who owns a spell you cast this way loses life equal to its mana value. You just get free spells and it domes your opponents for it.
Thank you very much. This is mine now. Please be punished for it.
This might be one of the strongest reanimator targets that they've printed in Rakdos in a second, especially because it just gains indestructible. Like, so obviously you still have your Swords to Plowshares and your Path to Exiles to worry about as Kefka comes into play. But if you reanimate this really early, especially when there's only a few cards in the graveyard, you're just going to start snagging spells. And like, it's impervious to murders on your turn. Like, there's really...
you gotta get him off turn. Yeah.
You gotta get him off turn, which I think is one of the mechanics from the game, I would assume. That you can't do anything to him while he's doing anything.
I believe it's more. This came from the video that we were talking about earlier. It's more for the fact that Kefka as a villain, he's the main antagonist of 6,
Exactly.
and 6 did this unique thing that it sets you up the whole first half of the game to go face him, and then you do face him, and then you think you've won, and then the whole party loses. Yeah. And then the back half of the game is re-rallying your troops again to go fight him again in his big ultimate like form after he's already blown up the earth.
Yeah. So this is, his first form is indestructible, can't lose kind of thing.
Yeah.
Really, really sick. Like I said, there's not a ton of real like reanimation support in this deck. There is, we'll talk about it in a second. There is an actual reanimate in this deck, which I would certainly pay 7 life to have Kefka come into play really, really early. So there's a little bit of reanimation package in here. Mostly you're looking to be reanimating things with power 3 or less with Terra. But hey, you just slam down a Kefka for 7 mana. Who cares? You're going to start getting stuff going on. Last new card I want to talk about, the Warring Triad. This is a weird one, dude. This is freaking weird. So it's 3 mana, generic mana, for a 5/5 legendary artifact creature god, with flying, trample, and haste. Okay?
All right. I'm in.
As long as there are fewer than 8 cards in your graveyard, it's not a creature. And it has an ability to tap, mill a card, target player adds 1 mana of any color.
Milliken plus.
It's Milliken plus, then it's a 5/5 with flying, trample, and haste. This is so good. Like, I don't...
It sounds.
This is what I want out of a 3 mana rock, is a finisher.
It sounds stupid. You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of Cultivator's Caravan from
100%.
Yeah, from the original Kaladesh block. It was a very similar thing. It was the 3 mana Manalith style mana rock that could be a 5/5 sometimes.
Yes. It's sick to see the god type on a colorless card, especially on an artifact.
Again. Assassin's Creed.
Was that a god or was that an avatar?
I think it was both. That big colorless one.
Yeah,
it was like 11 something mana. I think it was
whatever.
God. I don't know. That one.
You'll put it up here and one of us will be right. Sweet. So that's like the new cards I want to talk about. So the deck, like I said, the way it functions is it's going to be this like kind of grindy value deck where you're going to be playing these cards that you don't care whether they die or they have some way to get themselves to the graveyard, or you're just milling them with Terra as you go. This kind of plays as a weird, like almost Kalia of the Vasti sort of vibe. Like you're trying to get stuff in and reanimate it cheap. There is some pretty sweet reprints in this deck, John. We'll start with the boring ones, which are the lands, which is awesome. So I've included, there's 7 cards that are above $5 that have been reprinted in this deck. 2 of them are lands, which is sweet. It's the most boring of cards to receive, but I'm very grateful for it. So one of them is
always handy to have,
Yeah, one of them is Graven Cairns, which is the filter land that taps for a colorless on its own. I believe these were from Lorwyn?
Originally,
Lorwyn lands? Yeah.
Cairn specifically was from Future Sight, and then was Lorwyn.
Thank you, Oracle.
Yeah.
So that's the Graven Cairns, and then there's a High Market in the deck as well. Everyone say High Market.
High Market.
Couple other really good value reprints in the deck. We have an Archfiend of Depravity, which is a card that I've not seen very often, but woofy, what a card. It's a
doozy.
It's a 5 mana 5/4 with flying. With at the beginning of each opponent's end step, that player chooses up to 2 creatures they control and sacrifices the rest. So this is a real control-y piece. Like I said,
and this is all, by the way, as well. Like you're seeing them here on video, but for our audio listeners as well, by the way,
Ooh,
any reprints we are talking about, all of them are art and flavor adjusted to the world of Final Fantasy. So that's worthwhile bringing up about, because it's like, if you like these kind of cards and you are also big into Final Fantasy, here you go. Here's 4 different decks, one right now we're talking about, that are in a variety of both new cards and reprints, all of them now themed around your favorite games.
Yeah. Aforementioned, there's a reanimate in the deck, which anytime that they want to throw me a reanimate, I'm really happy with it.
They've been putting reanimate a lot in PreCons recently.
Yeah, it was really underprinted for a long time, and then recently has been printed quite often. We have Reanimate Plus in the deck, which is Rise of the Dark Realms. This is the other end of the spectrum. Such a cool reprint in this deck. So it's 9 mana to put all creatures from all graveyards onto the battlefield under your control. There was a long time where this was like a $25 card, so I'm grateful to see this one come down and continue to be reprinted.
Yep.
There's a Ruinous Ultimatum in this deck. Just Mardu's "Oops, I win the game" button. And then the last one, which is understandably an expensive reprint. This will not stay expensive for long because it's an uncommon, but Stitch Together is in this deck, which I'd never seen before. It's a black for a sorcery. It says return target creature from your graveyard to your hand. And then Threshold, so if you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard, return that card from your graveyard to the battlefield instead. So early game, it's just going to recur something to your hand. Late game, it's going to recur something to the battlefield for you at the very, very low cost of black. Especially with such a good mana base in this deck. Like, I'm really happy with what they're doing here.
You should have access to your colors like most of the time.
Most certainly. Like, obviously you have your command towers, you have your exotic orchards, but like they've thrown in like Dragon Skull Summit, Clifftop Retreat, they've got the check lands in here. These feel a lot like the Lord of the Rings commander decks, to be honest. Which kind of makes sense. They were roughly about the same amount of new cards per deck, and about the same retail price as well. I think the Lord of the Rings decks might have been $80 if I remember correctly. If not, they were about 70 as well.
Somewhere in this same price range. Yeah, I think we're maybe looking closer towards perhaps the Fallout ones as well, with like a very similar vibe as well.
For sure. Except those had like 50 new cards per deck.
That is true, yeah.
40 cards, I believe.
So the new cards have been toned down in these decks significantly.
Yeah, so there's only 10 basic lands out of 37 lands in the deck. So there's a ton of non-basics, and they're all pretty good ones. Like, we have that whole cycle of the Lorwyn filter lands. All that to say, your mana is going to be pretty good in this deck. I did some play testing with it, and it's not difficult to access the correct colors of mana. It's a relatively synergistic deck. It sort of feels like it's playing in between both this grindy value package and then a full reanimator package. But then there's things like Sun Titan in the deck, where it kind of fits both ends, where you can reanimate your Sun Titan and then it starts bringing stuff back.
It gets little guys back. Yep.
100%. I think the best card in the deck is going to be Priest of the Fell Rites. This, to me, feels like exactly what this deck is trying to do, which is play this 2-mana thing that's under 3 power that sacrifices itself to reanimate something bigger. So as you're milling stuff, you can, reanimate the Priest of the Fell Rites with Terra, and then use the Priest of the Fell Rites to reanimate Kefka. And then next turn, when you swing with Terra, reanimate Priest of the Fell Rites again for 2 mana, crack it again, sacrifice something bigger. So you're kind of gonna build up this chain of command of reanimation. I had so much fun playtesting this deck. I really think that anybody who picks this up is going to be having an absolute blast with it. Just filling their graveyard and finding some combo of reanimating something little that does something bigger to find yourself in a winning position with it. It's really sticky, I would call it. This is a deck that I would refer to as sticky, because you're just not going to be able to remove enough stuff. What?
Kefka's sticky.
Kefka's sticky. Yeah, well, it's like, this is why I love playing reanimator decks, is you just blank people's removal, unless they exile it, of course. So things that I would do differently, John, there is one piece of protection in this deck. For a deck that's completely centered around playing your commander and swinging with it, there is exclusively a Swift Foot Boots in this deck.
Ooh, boy.
Not even Lightning Greaves. So I would say upgrade that to a Lightning Greaves, put one in there if you want to, but that's not an exciting enough card to talk about. Putting in the deck. I do think that
take the Lightning Greaves out of Cloud's deck and put it in here.
Yeah, you don't want Shroud in that. The first thing I'm going to put in this deck is a Selfless Savior. This is the 1-mana dog that sacrifices itself to give another creature indestructible until end of turn. This I debated between this being Selfless Savior and Selfless Spirit, which sacrifices to give your entire board indestructible.
Yes.
But I've found, again, we don't care if stuff goes to the graveyard outside of Terra. So that 1 mana cheaper actually fits better into the curve to me than Selfless Spirit does. So I'm recommending a Selfless Savior for this deck. That sort of helps sort out some of the protection pieces. And then one of my other favorite forms of protection is just finding a redundant piece for your commander. And I found that in Alesha Who Laughs at Fate. This is the 3 mana, it's a Rakdos Alesha. It's a 2/2 first strike. When she attacks, when they attack, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. But it has this really important ability that reads a lot like Terra, which is raid at the beginning of your end step. If you attacked this turn, return target creature with mana value less than or equal to Alesha's power from your graveyard to the battlefield. So you don't have to attack with Alesha ever for it to continue to trigger. You do it once, and all of a sudden you have Terra's trigger on your end step, just for attacking with Terra. Outside of that, you're just going to get 2 power things back. Oh no, 2 mana things. This one is mana value less than or equal to Alesha's power. So on rate, without ever attacking with them or boosting power whatsoever, you're going to continue to get things with mana value 2 or less back on your end step just by continuing to do what your commander wants to do anyway. So I'd like to consider that as a form of protection, because now you just have another thing that's doing the same thing that needs to be killed. So that's Alesha. We've talked about Selfless Savior. What is something cool that we could continue to reanimate, John? That is maybe under 3 power that does a very similar thing to what Priest of the Fellright does? Karmic Guide. There's not a Karmic Guide in this deck.
Oh, really?
How is there not? It's so perfect. Let me tell you about why Karmic Guide is so perfect in this deck. One,
because it's 2 power.
It's 2 power. It sacrifices itself on the upkeep.
Mm-hmm.
With the Echo, you just never pay the Echo, and then it's back in your graveyard, and then you just get it back with Terra every single turn. It's going to sacrifice itself.
Yep.
You swing with Terra, you reanimate it, you get something else back. Next turn, it puts itself right back into the graveyard where it wants to be. So Karmic Guide might be the best card in the deck, as it normally is when you're playing a Karmic Guide. But that is just such a sweet piece of glue that you're going to get to add into that deck. A little bit of extra removal that I would throw in here. One, a Cursed Marauder. If you've ever played with Luris or with Alesha, or any of the Aleshas, and you've gotten to play a Cursed Marauder, sacrificing itself to then put itself in the graveyard and then continuing to reanimate the Accursed Marauder to just edict the board over and over and over and over again, it turns into a win. So having something like Accursed Marauder, again, we want little things that will put themselves into the graveyard to continue to get back with Terra, and Accursed Marauder is one of the best at doing that. That's 4 cards I want to add. Last one, I wanted to hit my 5 cards for the deck. I think that Brass's Tunnel Grinder might be sick in here. This is sort of my, hear me out card. So Brass's
Tunnel Grinder. Okay.
Brass's Tunnel Grinder. It's a 3-mana legendary artifact from Lost Caverns of Ixalan. When it enters the battlefield, you discard any number of cards and then draw them any cards +1. Hey, it's Celeste. At the beginning of your end step, if you descended this turn, put a boar counter on Tunnel Grinder. Then if there are 3 or more boar counters on it, you flip it over. You transform it into Tekutlan, the Searing Rift. It's a legendary cave. It taps for red, and then when you cast a permanent spell using mana from it, you discover X, where X is that spell's mana value. So it's like ramp. It's a wheel for yourself. It sort of ramps at some point. You're always going to be descending, because for those who don't remember, descend is just a permanent card was put into your graveyard from anywhere, including being milled from Terra on her ability. So Terra beginning of combat is going to descend every turn anyway. So it's just going to take 3 turns for this to flip over into a land that then is just going to get you crazy value. Like you just start Discover X every turn, where X is your biggest spell that you're casting. That is some value right there.
Nice. That's very cool. That's a cool one. I wasn't familiar with that one.
Yeah, that was my I always try to throw in like a hear me out include, and Brass's Tunnel Grinder is that. Man, I cannot talk highly enough about this deck. I think on face value, when you compare it to the other decks, it's maybe slightly weaker than what the other ones are trying to do. But it just feels like this beautiful dance where as soon as you start going, it's just this engine that kind of churns up to speed. I had so much fun playtesting it. Yeah, overall, I would say this is like a 7 or an 8 out of 10 on my love for this precon scale. I love Mardu, I love reanimating, I love value engines. This just really speaks to me. So this might get me to play Final Fantasy VI, TBH. But that's all I've got for this commander deck. Really stoked on it.
Very cool, very cool. So we break away from the classic pixel days from the Super Nintendo. Have you maybe heard of this little hidden gem of a game possibly called Final Fantasy VII?
I've heard it's the best in the series. And I know that alone might be a controversial statement, but from the friends of mine who play Final Fantasy have said that 7 is, at the very least, it's a good starting point in the series.
I know what a cloud is. I know. Hey. Shocker. The boomer in video games actually understands a character.
Yes.
But yeah, so let's move on to the Final Fantasy VII deck, which is called Limit Break. This is a Naya equipment themed deck with a sort of like sub-focus kind of playing into the joke of Final Fantasy VII. It cares a lot about high power creatures, and specifically if they are power 7 or greater. You see what they did there? Clever.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So
just rewarding you for already having a dominant board.
Are you winning? You get to win even harder.
Right. Limit break. You're breaking the limits on how much you can win.
I think that's a game mechanic in the game. I'm sorry, gang.
So.
I know I'm a disappointment when it comes to actually knowing what a Final Fantasy is, but I can talk Magic to you, and let me tell you about the Magic cards that come in this Magic collection. Starting with our commander, which is Cloud X Soldier! And exclamation. Soldier's a military branch in the game, supposedly. Yes. It's an acronym for whatever. 2 red, green, and a white. Legendary creature, human soldier mercenary. He starts as a 4/4 with haste. And when he enters, attach up to 1 target equipment you control to him. Whenever Cloud attacks, you draw a card for each equipped attacking creature you control. Then, if Cloud has power 7 or greater, you create 2 treasure tokens.
Lovely. That's a lot of good text on there.
Yeah, easy. So the most important thing there to note is that it's not drawing a card for each equipment you control. It's drawing a card for each equipped creature. So if
attacking
Cloud...
creature.
Yeah, if Cloud's your only attacker, you'll only draw 1 card. But that is always a guaranteed card as long as he's equipped. With haste as well, that auto-attaches stuff to him as well. One of the coolest things that you can do with equipment is cheating the cost that it takes to send it over attached to something else, right? You know, like this deck wants you to do the stupid thing with Colossus Hammer. It comes in the deck here. So imagine that. You get
14.
Oh,
but he loses flying.
Oh, he wasn't flying anyway, so whatever. So you know what I mean? So obviously what Cloud wants you to do is you want to get an equipment down some point before the turn 5 that he would come down, and preferably something that would boost up his power. You can do that with some of the equipment that comes in this deck, but not all of it. So that's where the rest of the support pieces in this deck come into play, whereas if the equipment themselves are not boosting up the power higher, other game pieces like the other legendary creatures and some of the artifacts and stuff like that, they can help increase the power as well. But as a card itself, right, just rewarding, like you said, rewarding you for having the biggest thing down in play, you get a card, you get a fast creature coming in immediately that can sometimes also make you treasures, which is great. It lets you keep going into your other big creatures as well. But a good incentive to be able to go wide then is your other commander that comes in the deck, Tifa, a martial artist. She's 1 red, green, and a white. Legendary creature, a human monk. There's a 4/4 with melee. Melee means that this creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each opponent you attacked this combat. So if Tifa goes at a single opponent, she gets +1/+1. If you have her plus 2 other creatures going at your other 2 opponents, the creature with melee will get a total of +3/+3. So
Hey, that's 7.
Yeah, that's important for her next line here. That whenever 1 or more creatures you control with power 7 or greater deal combat damage to a player, untap all creatures you control. If it's the first combat phase of the turn, there is an additional combat phase after this phase.
Broken.
So just
this
like
is nuts.
So just like Cloud rewards you for getting up to that 7 total power, of which, very interestingly, she can do naturally by herself, as long as you've got herself and 2 other attackers going at 2 other opponents. Her own melee will get her up to the 7 power for the first combat. And then what happens then when you go swinging into your next combat? Melee will happen again because you're attacking again. You're declaring attackers in your next combat phase. So at the very minimum, you'll get like Tifa to be able to go in at least twice with melee if you can get her power up to 7, either through the melee trigger or, like we have talked about, the other equipment and such that comes in this deck. Diving into our collection of reprints in here is, like I said, we've got a variety of stuff that cares about getting the power up on these particular attacking creatures, and equipment-based cards as well. So like some notable, really, really high ones in here is stuff like Darksteel Plate, is just as sort of like a baseline. This is your equipment that is going to grant indestructible to whatever you have equipped onto that. We've got other really good protection stuff in here, like Champion's Helm, that is also protection and gives a power boost as well, power and toughness. I had mentioned Colossus Hammer. That's a stupid one to swing right down onto Cloud as soon as he comes down. Just an immediate 14/14.
Yeah.
Very, very stupid. That one is. There's a fun equipment stealing creature who hasn't been reprinted yet before, Armory Automaton. The 3-mana 2/2 artifact construct that when it enters or attacks, you may attach any number of target equipment to it.
Oh, it just cheats all of them.
Yeah, not only does it cheat the ones that you have, it can steal from opponents as well.
Oh.
You attach any equipment. Now, you don't gain control of them, but for a turn, he can just yoink any relevant equipment that are down. That one's very fun, very fun. Hero's Blade comes in here. It's a very standard one when it comes to like legendary creatures going into combat, just auto attaches itself. So more stuff to just automatically swing right down onto Cloud as he comes down into play. Real stupid.
That Hero's Blade too.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. Some other good evasion ones is Trailblazer's Boots is in here too. It gives a non-basic land walk on a 2-mana equipment that equips for 2. So as you had talked about, that these decks are filled out with a variety of really, really fresh non-basic lands. This is going to make Cloud just be able to sneak in, or Tifa, I suppose, either one of them, get both of them in for combat damage real fast. Talking about the stuff that is like super notable as far as their price point is concerned, you had mentioned with lands, Firelit Thicket is one of those filtering lands that comes in this deck as well. It's very cool. Not much else outside of that as far as the lands, as far as a high price point is concerned, but it's a good one to have all the same. The other notable, really, really high one is a protection spell called Clever Concealment. Apparently stuck its way up to like over $25 somehow, but
the quote unquote budget to fairies protection.
Yeah. 2 and double white for an instant with Convoke. Convoke means that you can tap any number of creatures and they can help pay for the cost of the spell by either adding 1 or 1 mana of that creature's color. And then any number of target non-land permanents you control phase out. They're treated as though they do not exist, and they phase back in at your next untapped step. Very, very cool. So you can, if you've got the right amount of creatures down in play, you could make this cost reduced pretty really well, or you could even potentially cast it for free if you've got the means of at least 2 white creatures to help you provide the white mana. That's a thing that people forget about when it comes to Convoke, is that the creatures you tap can produce mana equal to whatever its color is. So
super good.
Very, very neat. Just surprise protection out of nowhere you may not have noticed. You've also got some really stupid stuff in here, like Hellkite Tyrant, because you're already going to be doing some artifact-related stuff, so you just need to get in at somebody who has some collection of artifacts, and you might be able to hit that 20 because you've got like your equipment, and Cloud is making treasure, and then there's other artifact creatures that are in here, so it could happen. You never know.
True.
Professional Face Breaker is also here as well, kind of capitalizing on that. You want to be hitting multiple people, just like we had talked about with Tifa. Face Baker, Face Breaker,
Race Baker,
Rice Baker. Face Breaker works in a similar manner where if you hit multiple opponents, you're going to be getting multiple treasures off of that. Super cool. We're a big fan of that. I already talked about Darksteel Plate as well. Sword of the Animist is another one of your great equipments that comes in here. Legendary equipment. When the equipped creature attacks, it also gets +1/+1 from the equipment, but when it attacks, you search your library for a basic land, put it in the battlefield tapped. So just ramp anytime you attack. It's very, very cool. I'm a big fan of it.
Yeah. Hey, you're welcome for that one because I just bought a copy of it, so that's why they reprinted it. So you're welcome, guys.
Super cool, super cool. But to go alongside with these reprints of cards, there is a variety of some new cards that are very, very cool. And like we've talked about, we're not going to be going over every single new card that comes in these decks. I just wanted to bring up to your attention some of the really, really interesting ones that I like a lot. And the first one I want to talk about is one of the other legendary creatures that comes in this deck, Vincent, Vengeful Atoner. Is 2 and a red for a legendary creature assassin. He's a 3/3 with menace. Whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on Vincent. And then I think that's chains. Chain, is that a flavor word there?
Chaos.
I would say. It's chaos. It looks like chain to me. I'm sorry. I'm kind of reading on small font. I apologize. Chaos. Whenever Vincent deals combat damage to an opponent, it deals that much damage to each other opponent if his power is 7 or greater.
Ooh.
Yeah, baby. I'm a big fan of there's this all-time classic that I'm a really big fan of called Hydra Omnivore. Is very much like that. You send just this guy in at one person, and then everybody receives pain.
Yeah, I mean, it's the inherent problem with playing a Voltron deck is once you take one person out, you're the scariest, and you still have to take 2 other people out. It takes 3 turns to take the board out with a Voltron deck, and something like Vincent just mitigates that.
This is just, again, this is another of the cards that comes in here that is just giving you good rewards for boosting his power up above 7, of which he can do on his own, even without the equipment. And then you start adding, like, Vincent is going to be the one who you want to give the equipment onto that gives him evasion, because he'll naturally be boosting up his power, right? Sure. Cloud is the one who you're going to want to put the equipments on to boost his power. Vincent will want to be able, like with the Trailblazers Blitz that we were talking about as well, right? He's going to naturally get his own +1/+1 counters up to 7. Then you just want to make sure that he's connecting every turn.
Yeah, the menace is nice on him too.
Yeah, the natural menace is good as well, but anything else that you can give him to start getting in the combat damage is going to be very, very helpful.
Fire.
The other new cards I want to talk about in here are actually 2 more of the other new equipment that come in this deck. The first one is the Conformer Shuriken. 2 mana legendary artifact equipment. Equipped creature has, when this creature attacks, tap target creature defending player controls. If that creature has greater power than this creature, put a number of +1/+1 counters on this creature equal to the difference. And then it equips for 2.
Jeez.
So twofold of what this is doing here is obviously this is helping you get not just the equipped creature, anything else you have, right? Because like when a creature becomes tapped, it's no longer able to be a blocker anymore. So you're getting some evasion out of this card, but then also you're just taking down anything that is currently bigger than the creature that you're currently swinging with and gaining +1/+1 counters equal to the difference. So like another problem that can happen with combat focused style decks is that if somebody else is outclassing you as far as power and toughness is concerned, you're just not going to be able to start getting your combat damage or your attack triggers in. And that's especially what people like Tifa and Cloud and the Vincent we were just talking about as well. All of those do their things based on connecting through with combat damage. So making sure that they can connect is very, very important to deck strategies like this. And this is a card that'll help you do that.
So dope. This is a really good equipment.
Yeah, it's a really, really good one. But honestly, my favorite is the other new legendary one that comes in here, Wrecking Ball Arm. Because what's the most sane thing to do when you lose your arm in battle? Simply replace it with a weapon.
Thanks, Japan.
I'm a big fan of this. 2 mana legendary equipment. Equipped creature has base power and toughness 7/7 and can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. Equips for 7 or equips a legendary creature for 3.
Roll the credits, man. That's everything the deck wants to do.
Yep. It's dope. I'm a big fan of this, right? Like this reminds me, like especially with the equip a legendary creature and equip regular, this reminds me of Blackblade Reforged a little
Yes,
bit.
that equip legendary is very similar.
Yeah, gives a +1/+1. The reason, like, I'm not a huge fan of that card much anymore, just because in these sort of like equipment go fast style decks, you're not gonna be like, those are typically the colors that can't ramp too crazy hard. And while this is a Naya deck, you do have access to some green. You're also going to be, your mana acceleration is going to be coming from in the form of like treasure tokens off of Cloud. So this is a better card to that sort of theming as compared to Blackblade Reforged. Add Blackblade if you want to. It's a very, very cool equipment. Don't get me wrong, especially with a deck like this that like over half of the new cards are legendary creatures. So I'm sure you could find use for it in here too. But yeah, I don't know. I've made my case before for cards like Almost Perfect, that like the things that modify base power and toughnesses, I love these kinds of things because they're compoundable with other effects, right?
Dude, let's talk about equipping this onto Vincent. Like, Vincent puts +1/+1 counters onto himself, and you just put his base power and toughness up to 7/7. Then you get to continue to scale him higher with those +1/+1 counters. It's not like, oh, you move the equipment over and all of a sudden that boost goes away. Like, this is dope.
Precisely.
And it's a wrecking ball arm.
The most sane thing to throw on your arm, you know?
Yes. I love it. I don't care what it is. I'm going to bust him up. That's the flavor text on it.
Oh, yeah? Sick. Dope. That's very, very cool. What would be some, we had just talked about, you could potentially throw like Blackblade Reforged into this deck. What would be some other really cool pieces that I would want in here? There is one standout. Most of my upgrade is going to be changes to the equipment package, because that's especially what Cloud wants to do. He wants to have stuff thrown onto him to get that power up higher so that you're drawing cards and making treasures. There's a variety of ones that I have listed here, but one of my personal favorites that I enjoy, that is it kind of does like what Cloud does to throw an equipment over to himself naturally, while also providing a power toughness boost and evasion, as Maul of the Skyclaves, originally from Zendikar Rising. 2 and a white for an equipment that when it enters the battlefield, attach it to target creature you control, and the equipped creature gets +2/+2, flying, and first strike. And then it also just equips for 2 and double white. This is perfect. This is a great one to put on Cloud. Get him flying, get him first strike, get his power bigger. And notably as well, this will go onto him once he's already down in play. Remember, the auto attach to him only happens when he enters the battlefield. So more equipment like this that can shuffle itself over to him very, very cheap or for free is going to be very, very helpful to make sure that his trigger is going off more frequently. And same for Tifa as well. This one is great for Tifa because she naturally already starts as a 4/4. This will put her right up to a 6/6. Then with flying, that the melee will put her right at a 7/7.
Beautiful.
There you go. Perfect. This one is great twofold. Another really stupid one that I like a lot I play an equipments deck. That's why I kind of wanted to play this. I wanted to talk about this deck in particular as well, because this kind of strategy, this idea is very close and near and dear to me as a Sir Gwen Hero of Ashvale player. Yeah. I love this kind of stuff. Another favorite of mine then is Bloodforged Battle Axe. Okay. It's a single mana equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+0, and whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, create a token that's a copy of Bloodforged Battle Axe, and it equips for 2. Dope. Yeah. Amazing. Dope. This works well with Cloud because you can start putting a bunch of these battle axes onto him, and all it takes is like 2 of them to get him up to that 7 power you need. And then same with Tifa, and even stupider with that one as well, because if you gain those extra combats, every single combat is making you a new Bloodforged Battle Axe.
Yeah.
This then gives you more copies of the same card to do that go wide thing that Cloud wants to do on his first part as well, drawing you a card for each equipped creature you control. So you just get a bunch of copies of this, throw them down on some of your other legendary creatures, and now you can start drawing 3, 4, 5 cards of combat that will then be connecting and making you more battle axes. It's very stupid. I'm a big fan of this one. Very surprisingly, I was very shocked to see that Masterwork of Ingenuity was also not in this deck either. This would be a perfect equipment to throw in here. Maybe not necessarily if you are doing tons of the legendary equipment, but some of these utility ones like the Battle Axe we were just talking about, or the Lightning Greaves, or the Trailblazer's Boots, or the Darksteel Plate, any of those kinds of things that you would want to have multiple copies of. Masterwork of Ingenuity is a very good piece for that. A single drop artifact equipment that you can have it enter the battlefield as a copy of any equipment on the battlefield.
Yep, easy.
Just is what it is. Do you have a favorite equipment in play? Now you have 2 of them.
Those.
Easy. Very cool. Very cool. You need to have ways to be able to grab these equipments whenever the most appropriate time is to have them. Like if you need the evasion ones or you need the power and toughness ones. And the deck as a whole, right out of the box, does not have a ton of means to be able, like, obviously there's the card draw, but there's like next to nothing as far as the tutoring out a good equipment is concerned. So I'd recommend you throw in here a nice dinky little one of my favorites is Open the Armory for when you don't want to play game changer cards like Enlightened Tutor. And such. Open the Armory, 1 and a white for a sorcery, searches your library for an aura or equipment card, reveals it, put in your hand, then shuffle.
Can't be mad.
Yep. If you have the budget for it, Steel Shaper's Gift is also another popular choice as well. It's 1 mana cheaper and just goes and gets an equipment exclusively, but that one costs a little bit more as far as dollar amount is concerned. But I like Open the Armory because of its flexibility of also being able to grab an aura if need be. There's not a ton of that in this deck, but you could adjust that.
There's none.
If need be. There is none, yeah. And auras are just as viable to be able to get those power toughness boosts going up. So if you want to turn this into a combination, like kind of what the Fallout deck for Dogmeat was sort of like, that one was trying to do a blend of both equipment and auras. You could absolutely turn Cloud into a deck that does that as well.
Tifa would be really good in that spot. I think Cloud is better with just equipment because he cares about drawing cards from equipped creatures. But to your point, Tifa is banging with auras.
Mm-hmm. The last new card that I would want to add into this deck in here is another legendary creature to help give just a general purpose boost to your creatures that want to be its power 7 or greater. And that's our fun little D&D friend here called Brunor Battlehammer.
Yeah, dude, Brunor.
2 red and a white legendary dwarf warriors, a 5/3. Each creature you control gets +2/+0 for each equipment attached to it, and you can pay 0 rather than pay the equip cost of the first equip ability you activate each turn. So
it's like a little mini Sir Gwyn.
Yep. Kind of, where this one will track the amount of individual equipments you have on one single creature. So really, all it takes with Cloud then at that point is just a single equipment that's giving +2. Then his ability, Brunor's, gets an additional +2 for that equipment that is attached onto him. Now just off of one single equip cost, of which that you could equip for free if Brunor's the first, if you drop him down as well. Plus on top of the one that Cloud auto attaches to himself, you know, like this combination of stuff is that you could get him up to that 7 power on the turn you play him. And that's going to definitely be one of the goals when playing this deck, is you're going to want to not necessarily right on curve when you have the mana to play Cloud. You're going to want to wait to make sure that you've got the board set up to have exactly that combination of cards, both equipment and other power boosters, to make sure that his power is 7 or greater the moment you're ready to start going in for combat damage.
Yeah. Boy, that haste on Cloud really makes him playable.
It's stupid. It's very, very cool, right? Like,
if you had to play him and then wait a turn to come back around, this would be an unplayable card.
Right, because like you had mentioned as well, what's one of the biggest deterrents, especially when it comes to a Voltron or equipment style matters deck, is you get all these things slapped onto a creature and then a board wipe happens. You got to get your commander back down, and then all that equip cost has to go back over to that commander again. With something like Cloud, he's got haste, ready to go to combat the moment you recast him, and he'll bring over to himself the strongest thing you already have down in play. He could be coming back down on haste after a like a board wipe and just be ready to start swinging again. This deck, more than any of them that we have here tonight, this is going to be the one that you would have to watch out for as far as dying to commander damage is going to be
100%.
concerned. You will die to commander damage with this deck, and I'm a big fan of it. I wouldn't call it my favorite of the collections of here. Unironically, I probably would give this a 7 out of 10. Genuinely, like it's the 16? Joke. But I mean, yeah, like these types of decks that want you to have both creatures and equipments, they can be a little tough as far as the balancing act is concerned of how much of one part do you play over the other. And you can also still just get stonewalled in a deck like this as well. You could have all your creatures and no equipment and whatever. These things happen. This is all natural when it comes to playing the game. But if you get your pieces lined up in such a way, Cloud is going to absolutely be smashing in for combat damage anytime you're ready to limit break him to the limit with breaking the face with the face breaker. And
all right, John, take me away. Talk to me about some Bant counters, perhaps.
Yeah, so we jump ahead in games a little bit then. We are now up to Final Fantasy X. Came out on one of those next-gen consoles for some of those platforms, maybe PC as well. Can you tell I don't know what a Final Fantasy is? You know
what a Titus is?
Is that like the stuff you put in the laundry? That's Tide.
Yes. All right, John, talk about the deck.
The bad Final Fantasy jokes will continue until morale improves.
Yes.
This is Titus, Yuna's Guardian. This is a Bant. +1/+1 counters. Actually, that's not even a statement. This is just a counters deck. You have a variety of different kinds of counters in here. +1/+1's obviously a big focus, but we're going to be using all kinds of stupid counters in this deck. But so Titus, and specifically, is green, white, and a blue. Legendary creature, human warrior. Starts as a 3/3. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may move a counter from target creature you control onto a second target creature you control. And then a flavor ability, Cheer. Whenever one or more creatures you control with counters on them deal combat damage to a player, you may draw a card and proliferate. You do this only once each turn, though.
Wow.
Yeah, so what we are looking to do in this deck here is we are looking to get creature cards that have not only just +1/+1 counters, we're looking to do a variety of counters, and specifically the way to help us out to spread that love around is get a card that has more than one of that counter on it already. Titus can then move one of those counters you've got there, and then if those creatures are able to connect, you can proliferate them to get them higher up in numbers, right? What you don't want to be doing is just moving a single counter on a creature over to another creature. That doesn't really help you too much. You're going to want to kind of like divide and conquer. That's sort of what the idea here is looking to be. Take something that's got a bulk of counters on it, move one of those over to something else that wants counters, and then you start proliferating to be able to boost those numbers up in quantity. And the deck as a whole is focused around that. We've got cards in here that naturally get themselves +1/+1 counters through a variety of different means. We have other proliferating style cards in here to make sure you've always got multiple types of counters on there. And then we've got a variety of cards that have different types of counters. You know, we've talked about there's +1/+1 counters, but this deck more than any other ones is focused a little bit more on those summon creatures, those saga creature ones. So you've got like lore counters to move around. We've got some of the ability keyword counters to move around. It's real sick. It's a very, very cool play on the sort of we're just doing +1/+1 counters.
I dig it.
I like it. Your backup commander of this deck is Yuna, Grand Summoner. 1 green, white, and a blue. Legendary creature, human cleric is a 1/5. Grand Summon. For a tap, it adds 1 mana of any color. When you next cast a creature spell this turn, that creature enters with 2 additional +1/+1 counters on it. So exactly what we have just described that what Titus wants to be doing. You want to have a creature that's got multiple of a kind of counter on it so that when you go to combat for him, you can pull one of those away while still keeping at least 1 on the creature you pulled from. Very cool. Whenever another permanent you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, if it had 1 or more counters on it, you may put that number of +1/+1 counters on target creature. And it's worded like that because, like I had said, a vast of the amount of new cards that come in here are these brand new summons. They are these saga creatures. Those will leave the battlefield with their X amount of lore counters that then Yuna will see how many the summon left with and put that amount of +1/+1 counters on something.
I see. Interesting.
It's very, very cool. And just as a whole, the saga summon creatures are very, very neat. I'm not really going to be talking about much of them, but like we can bring one up as an example here. Something like summon Mega Sisters. 4 and a green. They're a 5/5. They're an enchantment creature saga fairy. So these are sagas that are naturally animated as creatures. Kind of what that means, though, is you only get them in play for the amount of lore counters that they have, as sagas tend to work. So when you have that down paired with Yuna, the saga will do its thing for a certain amount of turns, and then Yuna will see it go away. In the case of this one, it'll have at least three lore counters on it, and she'll move 1/1 counters onto anything else that's relevant to you.
Yeah, this is such a cool way to show summons from the game as like you get this character, you get this, ally for X amount of turns because all the Final Fantasy games are turn-based combat. So you get like turn, and then they're gone. So using sagas was a genius way to represent summons from the game.
Well, one of the most silly ways to be able to keep your saga creature going for some amount of time is actually going to be one of the new cards that comes in this deck. So we'll just go ahead and start talking about them now, I suppose. The particular favorite that I like is, I'm going to butcher this here, Oaka, Traveling Merchant.
I would track that as right. Oaka.
1 and a blue for a 1/2 legendary creature, human citizen. It taps, removes a counter from a non-land permanent you control, draw a card.
Easy.
Yeah, what's a counter you want to pull off of saga creatures? How about their lore counters? Yeah, now as long as you get a saga creature and then this guy down, you got not only repeated card draw, but your saga creature is going to continue to stay down in play because sagas will continue to start putting lore counters on themselves, even if you have ripped all of the lore counters off of it, right? If it comes in when it's 1, you pop that counter off at your next end of draw step or whatever. I think that's it when sagas go. It'll just put a new lore counter on itself. So that's stupid. That's very cool. And then outside of even the saga creatures, right? Just ripping a counter off of anything other than a land to just draw a card? That's silly.
Yeah, easy. Especially when you're proliferating with Titus and you just are going to throw ancillary like, oh, this has 2 flying counters on it now. One of them's not relevant. You just get rid of that irrelevant one to draw a card.
Yeah, or even something that is building up its 1/1 counters, right? Like this deck has like Forgotten Ancient in it as well. That thing's going to be getting 1/1 counters on it like mad. Now you can turn just one of those extra 1/1 counters into a card draw literally every time this creature is able to tap.
There's no difference between a 14/14 and a 15/15.
Nope. 0%. Another one of the really cool proliferate creatures that comes in this deck is Tromel, Seymour's Butler. 2 and a green for a legendary elf advisor is a 2/3. Each other non-token creature you control enters with an additional +1/+1 counter on it, and then 1 and tap, proliferate X times, where X is the number of non-token creatures you control that entered this turn.
I don't like it.
What do you mean?
I don't like proliferate X times. That's disgusting.
This reminds me a little bit of the shenanigans that you can kind of do with Oran Reef the Vastwood, where it's just like exponentially growing counters on everything that just came in that turn, right?
Yeah.
Trammell says that every non-token that enters comes in with an additional +1/+1 counter. So all you do is just a stack of creatures during your turn, leaving 1 mana spare for his activated ability that just, after all of those things have entered, whether you cast them or blinked them or reanimated them or whatever, however many non-token creatures entered that turn, 1 mana into him, and then you just proliferate X, which
this
is
stupid with Blink. I didn't even think about that.
Oh, yeah, because it just says entered. Yeah, any amount of them that can exit, re-enter during a turn, right? Big bounce spell, everybody comes out, everybody comes in, and then Trammell's like, oh, look at all these new friends who have 1/1 counters. Bap, 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 bap.
Yeah, proliferate. Not to mention, like, that's proliferate. Like, you can get extra lore counters from that. You can just pop all of your sagas. You get to ult your planeswalkers. There's so many good things that proliferate X means outside of just growing the power of your board.
Yup.
Dang, he's stupid.
That's a very cool one. My last new card that I want to talk about here is just a fun, dinky little enchantment here called Sphere Grid. 1 and a green for an enchantment that whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature. And then unlock ability, creatures you control with +1/+1 counters on them have reach and trample.
Real good.
Sure, just give them reach. Why not?
Yep.
And they have trample as well. These kinds of cards are very, very cool, right? Like stuff like Garruk's Uprising have been mainstays in Commander for a very, very long time because granting trample to your bigger creatures is very, very important. And this type of ability as well, specifically giving trample to creatures that have +1/+1 counters on them, right? We've seen this on a variety of different things. There's like the cat that does it. There's an insect that does it at a variety of different mana costs. So I like about this is A, it comes down really, really cheap at 2 mana. B, also gives reach for some stupid reason on top of trample. And C, your creatures that connect will naturally also gain +1/+1 counters on them too.
Yeah.
So like the things that are already hitting for trample are hitting harder. And then the things that don't have trample, if you can get them through, now they'll start gaining the counters, which both of your commanders want to be dealing with, and now have combat evasion. It's dumb.
Dude, it's a skill tree. You're just upgrading your character with the skill tree. It just requires hitting somebody, and then you get the skill points to then upgrade to reach and trample.
It's stupid. I'm a big fan. Can you tell I really, really like this deck? I usually don't care one way or the other about 1/1 counters or counter theme decks as a whole because like that's a lot of dice to keep track of. But you've got commanders and abilities here. Like we had just talked about with Titus is about moving counters around from creature to creature. The traveling merchant that like just literally rips counters away. So like you're not inherently looking to go super, super tall with a bunch of 1/1 counters. You want to make sure that everything on your board has counters in them in some capacity, which could sound like a little bit more of like a math headache, but I don't know. Just the ability of just shuffling all these counters around is stupid fun to me. I think it's just a really, really cool idea.
I dig it.
What are some of our big some big friends in here that can get ourselves some 1/1 counters? You've got dumb, stupid stuff in here like Bane of Progress. Enters, blows up all artifacts and enchantments, and gets a 1/1 counter on it for each permanent destroyed this way.
Excellent reprint.
Real stupid. You have Walking Ballista, one of the favorite combo engine pieces of all time. XX enters with X 1/1 counters, 4 mana, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature, and then remove a 1/1 counter from this creature. 1 damage to any target. Dumb.
Yeah. Good reprint.
Stupid. This is a fun counters related card that I actually have not seen before, but it is a reprint. And of course we had never seen this because it came from New Capenna Commander.
Hey!
So shocker. Resourceful Defense. 2 and a white for an enchantment that when a permanent you control leaves the battlefield, if it had counters on it, you put those counters on target permanent you control. And then for 4 and a white, move any number of counters from target permanent you control onto a second target permanent you control. So very similar to what Titus does, actually, just on an activated ability. But it also retains counters like anything leaves your battlefield, very Ozolith-like, right? Like where like it pulls the counters off and slaps them over to something else. Stupid fun. I'm a big fan of that. One of your other more notable reprints that comes in this deck is a board wipe called Damning Verdict. 3 and double white for a sorcery, destroy all creatures with no counters on them. So if you, between your commanders and all these other abilities that come in the deck, you just get a counter of any kind shared amongst all of your creatures that you have down in play. Here's a board wipe that's going to be one-sided, usually.
Yeah.
1/1 counters and counters as a whole exist across the whole color pie, obviously. So you're not going to hit absolutely everything when you cast a spell like this. But man, if you got your board set up in such a way that everything has a counter on it, this will drastically change the game in your favor. Very, very fun that one is. Other really fun stuff that comes in here, Luminous Broodmoth is going to be a stupid way to get flying across your whole team. Something of yours dies. If it didn't have flying, it comes back to the battlefield with a flying counter. With Titus, you can start moving that flying counter off the creature that came in with the flying counter, and then it can die again and then come back with another flying counter. Very cool, very cool. I have in here a particular favorite creature of my own personally is Sunscorch Regent. 3 and double white for a 4/3 dragon with flying that when an opponent casts a spell, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature and you gain a life. That's just stupid. He'll keep you alive. He'll keep you alive long term. Really, really cool. Inexorable Tide is in here as well. Every time you cast a spell, you proliferate. That'll also start exponentially growing the counters you have. Hardened Scales, I'm sure you figured was going to be in here because, of course, you're doing 1/1 counters and all that stupid stuff. Fight Rigging was a really fun one to see. I love Fight Rigging. I played a bunch in Brawl on Arena. This card is stupid fun. Hideaway 5, you throw a card into it off of your top 5. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Then, if you control a creature with power 7 or greater, you may play the exiled card without paying its mana cost.
Good.
Dumb.
Easy. Power 7 or greater. Triggered.
Wrong deck. And then I find most interesting here as well is another precon printing of Farewell.
Bro, why is that in here? You don't want a Farewell in this deck?
It's the best board wipe they've ever printed. Don't at me.
True.
Don't at me.
Yeah, but it resets yourself too. That could have been Wave Goodbye. That could have been so many cool things. Really good art too.
Yeah, but just this deck is super tuned. I really like what this deck is trying to do. Almost every card in here either does counters related stuff or synergizes in some way with having counters around on your battlefield at all. The concept, the theming is very, very cool here. We can make some adjustments though.
Ooh, tell me.
There is a card, I believe it's one of the new ones that comes in here. It's one of the creatures that it prevents damage and moves the damage that would be prevented that way. It puts it onto a different creature.
And Luzu.
Yeah, it's a legendary. Thank you for finding that. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's a legendary creature that prevents damage and throws 1/1 counters onto a thing, whatever. There's another card that also wasn't printed in this deck as well that does a very similar feel to what that card does, and that is Selfless Squire. 3 and a white for a 1/1 human soldier with flash that when it enters the battlefield, prevent all damage that would be dealt to you this turn, and whenever damage that would be dealt to you is prevented, put that many +1/+1 counters on Selfless Squire.
Fire.
Very cool. So it's just another piece like that just you will get damage. You'll get to protect yourself for a turn. Because fog style cards usually are not amazing as far as Commander is concerned. They have to do some other relevant thing alongside the fog to be worth including in your deck. That's what makes cards like Ink Shield so stupid good, right? Because you'll be preventing the damage and then gaining a huge boon to yourself on the backswing. And this is a card that kind of fills that similar role, whereas you'll keep yourself safe for a combat, and then also your deck is doing 1/1 counters. So here you go. Here's a lot more. Throw that in there. This deck is obviously able to move around any kind of counters. Obviously, +1/+1 counters is going to be the most prominent one, but we have seen a few of the cards in here that do the ability counter keywords. And one of the most notable ones that is missing from this deck is the ability to move indestructible counters, one of the cheapest ways that I found to be able to get those going down into your play is one of the legendary creatures from Lord of the Rings, Arwen, Mortal Queen.
Yeah.
1 green and a white, legendary elf noble is a 2/2. Arwen enters the battlefield with an indestructible counter on it. So that's just a 3-drop that can be indestructible for you. And then for a mana, remove an indestructible counter from Arwen. Another target creature gains indestructible until end of turn. Put a +1/+1 counter and a lifelink counter on that creature, and a 1/1 counter and a lifelink counter on Arwen.
Nice.
This is just everything your deck wants to do. You can start moving around the indestructible counter, and then when you need to start adding lifelink counters into your pool of all the stuff that you're moving around, here you go. You get her and another creature that just gets those for free. Or for free.
Lovely.
In the sense of, that's a very, very cool one. I found this is a favorite of yours, Joseph. I know that, like, when you are moving some of these counters around, and let's say a creature of yours runs dry as far as the counters is concerned, you just need something to be able to keep resetting them to also potentially come in with more 1/1 counters. This feels like a great home for Lily Splash Mentor.
Yeah, baby.
Lily Splash Mentor, 2 green and a blue, 4/4 frog druid with reach that for 1 green and a blue, exile another target creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with a +1/+1 counter on it, activate only as a sorcery.
Yeah, that's dope.
Yeah, easy, clean, simple way to make sure that any creature of yours is ready to go on Proliferate. So even if they're not able to start getting in with combat damage, you can use this friend to make sure that they have at least a 1/1 counter on them, so that when your other stuff that can get through for combat damage, you have as many targets as possible for your proliferating. But we can't be talking about Proliferate without talking about our favorite stupid fish friend here. That's Dreamtide Whale.
Yeah.
Get in here, Dreamtide Whale. Let's go.
You're definitely casting 2 spells a turn in this deck.
2 and a blue, 7/5 Whale with Vanishing 2. That when a player casts their second spell each turn, proliferate.
Easy enough.
Easy, stupid, will be block for you for days. You obviously don't want to try to proliferate that vanishing counter as much as possible. I suppose you could do something stupid with moving the vanishing counters around. I don't know if that does anything,
I don't know if it does or not.
It's something you could do.
It's unimportant.
Then one last little thing that I think would be a cool piece to have in here, because there's not tons of interaction in here either as well.
Very little.
Yeah, very little interaction. So a cool one that I found comes from Outlaws of Thunder Junction is Requisition Raid. This is a sorcery with Spree. You cast it for a white, and then you choose 1 or more additional costs. For a mana, destroy target artifact. For a mana, destroy target enchantment. Or for a mana, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature target player controls.
Nope.
Stupid. So if you never even use this as removal, this is 1 and a white, put a 1/1 counter across your team. That's exactly what you want to do. But then late game, you could also say, hey, get rid of that pesky artifact and get rid of that pesky enchantment. Also, I'll grow my team.
Nice. Yeah, that's an easy one. Good find.
Yeah. I also would be remiss not to put as an honorable mention that this feels like a good home for Simic Ascendancy, but, you know, add that at your discretion.
Only cares about +1/+1 counters, right?
It does, but you're doing
counts.
Yeah, you're doing a lot of that in this deck. So add it if you want. Add it if you want to. You know, it's however you feel about. Did you buy 20 Ways to Win? Go ahead and add Simic Ascendancy. If you just like alternate win cons, add Simic Ascendancy. Yes. Otherwise, use your own discretion. But
yep.
Yeah, this deck is just dope. I'm very, very happy with this one. It plays very, very well. It's very flexible and has a different approach to every game that you go, because you never really know what kind of counter is going to be moving around over the course of the game. You could end up with the larger selection of +1/+1 counter creatures. You could also be heavier into the ability counter keywords. You could just be focusing this in on the Summon Saga creatures that come from both in this deck plus the main set. You know, throw a bunch of those in here that fit the color bills. You could make a fantastic like Enchantress, Saga, counter moving type of shell.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. It's very,
Seems
very
dope,
cool.
man.
Yeah, this is like an 8 out of 10 for me, honestly. This one is very, very fun.
I would say it's like the it seems to be the most synergistic of the 4 decks, where like there's no cards in it that are in there for exclusively flavor purposes. Everything is in there because it works with the engine the deck is trying to do. Well, shall I take us away with the final deck of the evening, the Esper Yasholta deck?
Yeah. Coming to us from the fan favorite MMO Final Fantasy 14.
Yeah, baby.
I learned a fun fact about the game that this deck is focused around here is that like the MMO went up for some amount of time and then was shut down for like to basically improve it because it came out in a pretty poor state, and then it relaunched again and has since then skyrocketed up as one of the most popular MMOs of all time.
Insane. Kind of makes sense. It feels like everything that Final Fantasy touches turns to gold. That's it.
The most interesting thing about that though is what I heard is that they made the shutdown a lore thing, right? Like they clean slated the world to be like, hey, we're gonna rebuild the realm for you, and they turned it into like a lore purpose. That was so interesting. Like
That's
they had
fun.
no reason to do that, but they did.
Yeah, I love it. So this deck is Esper, which is white, blue, black, not to be confused with Esper from Final Fantasy, which seems to be a status. I don't know, maybe a type of magic. So this is Esper in Magic, which is white, blue, and black. And it is helmed by Yasholta. Oh, sorry, the deck is called Scions and Spellcraft. It is helmed by Yasholta, Knight's Blessed. It's 1 white, blue, and a black for a 2/4 legendary cat warlock with vigilance. And this is an insane card. It says, at the beginning of each end step, if a player lost 4 or more life this turn, you draw a card. That's the first ability. Second ability. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell with mana value 3 or greater, Yasholta deals 2 damage to each opponent and you gain 2 life.
Also silly.
Busted. This is insane. This is my favorite of the commanders that have been printed. It's value engine .deck is what this is. It's so ridiculous. The fact that the first ability only cares about a player losing life and it triggers each turn. You're regularly, I would say, going to be drawing 4 cards a cycle off of this. So as soon as this comes down, you got to find a way to deal 4 damage, and then or to yourself or to anybody else, because it can be damage to yourself as well. That you've taken.
Oh.
Yeah, it's just a player takes 4 life. That player can be you. So if you have a way to deal 4 damage to yourself on each player's turn, you just draw a card for it.
Necropotence.
Exactly. That's not what the deck is trying to do, but it's definitely a way that you can build this. What I love is that this is so masterfully designed to me because it's open-ended. You can play this in a bunch of different directions and have that be viable. Like I said, you can do group slug where you're trying to deal damage to everybody on each player's turn. You can do self damage. You can do a suicide deck where you're trying to just take your own life total down and draw cards off of it. It also, like the non-creature spells thing, it just cares about mana value. It doesn't care that you paid 3 mana into it. This can be free spells. For example, there's a Snuff Out in the deck. This can be a free spell that has mana value 3 or greater, and you just get that 2 damage to each opponent, and you gain 2 life.
That's silly.
Ridiculous. It's so silly. It's up the beanstalk. So that's Yasholta, who I will obviously recommend to keep in the command zone. Our alternate commander is Grahatia, Scion Reborn. It's white, blue, and a black for a 2/3 cat wizard with lifelink. And whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you may pay X life, where X is that spell's mana value. If you do, create a 1/1 colorless hero creature token and put X +1/+1 counters on it. Do this only once each turn. Significantly less exciting, but you can pay life into it, which means that somebody's lost 4 more life. This helps with the first trigger for Yasholta. That's what I'm trying to say.
Cool.
So the whole point of the deck is just value creatures. value things that trigger Yasholta. A quick stat here. I went through and tracked everything that keeps track of Yasholta, and I think there was two things that I threw in here. So there's 30 plus spells that trigger Yasholta in this deck. So very, very exciting. Tons of synergy happening here. There's and that's just cards that trigger. Most of them will trigger her once. There's repeatable spells in here that will be able to trigger her multiple times as well. So you're just trying to do damage to your opponents. This is a very spell slingery kind of wizard focused deck, even though she's a warlock, which is really unfortunate because there's wizard support in the deck. So that's why I said the Bant deck is the most synergistic, because there's definitely stuff in here that's just for flavor purposes. Some of the new cards that are unbelievably exciting. Cannot wait to talk about this. Let's bring Emmett Selch of the third seat to the table. This is 2 blue and a black for a legendary creature. It's an elder wizard. It's 3/4. It says spells you cast from your graveyard cost 2 less to cast. So it's just cost reduction on its own. Whenever one or more opponents lose life, you may cast target instant or sorcery from your graveyard. If that spell would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead. Do this only once each turn. This is Snapcaster Mage every time your opponents lose life.
And if the spell you recast makes them lose life, guess what? I'm gonna Snapcaster again.
It only does it once each turn. So
once. Okay, yes, right.
It can't loop itself, but once per turn, your opponent's losing life. It just cares about an opponent as well. So if one of your opponents attacks one of your other opponents, bam, I get a Snapcaster Mage that's cost reduced by 2.
Stupid.
Nutty. Also, very important, it says you may cast target instant or sorcery from your graveyard. That breaks timing restrictions. So you can cast sorceries at instant speed with this. So it is better than Snapcaster Mage. This is ridiculous. I cannot believe how much value is crammed onto this one card. This is going to trigger every turn, obviously. So you're just going to churn through these cards in your graveyard, which will continue to trigger Yasholta as you're casting these things that are cost reduced. Because like we said, doesn't matter if you've paid 3 mana into this thing. She just cares about mana value 3 or greater. So if there's a 3 mana instant or a sorcery in your graveyard, somebody loses life, you pay 1 mana, get that thing back, trigger Yasholta again. Stupid. This is ridiculous. I can't believe it. This is one of my favorite cards that's been printed in this set. If you can't tell, a little excited about this deck. This is awesome. I like Emmett Selch it's such a neat card that will just get you so much value over the course of the game. That is the most exciting of the cards that I'm going to be talking about that are new. The other ones are more just kind of fun. I really love this design on White Auracite, which is a new removal piece that's been printed into white. It's just 2 white for an artifact. When it enters, you exile a non-land permanent an opponent controls until it leaves the battlefield, and it can tap for white. Cool. So it's just like a non-land permanent Oblivion Ring on an artifact that can tap for white. So anything like we talk about all the time for versatility, if you can find a card that fills multiple slots, so like this fills both ramp and interaction, and it's an artifact if you have stuff that cares about it. It also triggers Yasholta because it's a non-land card or non-creature card that costs more than 3. So this is one of those beautiful, beautiful things that triggers her and fills multiple roles in the deck. So this is what I love to see from this type of deck, is just so much value off of one card. We're gonna be getting 2-for-1s, 3-for-1s.
Notable with that card, it's also in the main set. This is just a card that's reprinted it's printed in this Commander deck. It's also part of the booster set.
They're obviously excited about this card as well. Last new card I want to talk about is Hildebrand Manderville. This is that's right. In this deck, it's cool because it's a way to you'll get multiple triggers off of Yasholta from one card, but it's also just a sick card. So it's 2 mana for a legendary creature, Human Detective. He's a 2/2 and says creature tokens you control get +1/+1. And whenever he dies, you may cast it from your graveyard as an adventure until the next turn. And the adventure side of it is Gentleman's Rise, which is 2 and a black. It's an instant, it's obviously an adventure, which means you cast it, it gets exiled, and then you can cast it for the creature side from exile. So you get the adventure side of it, 2 and a black, and it just makes a 2/2 black zombie creature token. So this, as you continue to like play the adventure side and then play the creature side and then it dies, you then get to play that from the graveyard again as the adventure side, re-trigger your Shulta, get another 2/2. He comes back in, all of your tokens are now 3/3s. It's a loop that you can get on. So I would say you want to block with him pretty often because you, until the end of your next turn, you get to play him from the graveyard. So you don't have to play him as soon as he dies. You just get access to that adventure until the end of your next turn. So love the design on this. What a guy. Like the pose is immaculate. It's perfect. This is peak human form, I would say. But yeah, that's the kind of thing that this deck is really trying to do, is to just grind extra value off of a single card. Just see how far you can stretch that dollar. So there's some valuable reprints in this deck. One of them being Snuff Out, like we talked about earlier. This is like a $5 uncommon, a common, very importantly, because this is a Pauper staple.
We see you, Pauper.
That's right. This is a free interaction spell. It's just it's a destroy a non-black creature. It can't be regenerated. That costs 4. Is mana value of 4. But you can, if you control a swamp, you can pay 4 life rather than pay the spell's mana cost. That triggers both halves of your Shulta. You get the pay 4 life and you get the 3 mana value and over. John, one of your favorite cards is in this deck. Authority of the Consuls is in here.
Yeah.
Obviously, since we want to just be sitting and durdling with our cards, we need a lot of control pieces in this deck. And Authority of the Consuls, as you know, is just gonna keep you alive for a very long time. So everything comes in tapped. This will certainly keep you alive against the Cloud deck because it just negates that haste that's on Cloud there. So this is a really great control piece, and it is a lovely home in this deck. A piece of ramp that's awesome in here is Archaeomancer's Map. This is a 3 mana artifact. When it enters, you search your library for 2 basic planes, reveal them into your hand, shuffle, and then whenever a land an opponent controls enters, if that player controls more lands than you, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. So it's like a mini land tax plus a burgeoning in white on a 3 mana artifact. I really love Archaeomancer's Map, and it was creeping up to like $15. So this is a great reprint for this. And then there's a Crux of Fate in the deck for whatever reason. Obviously, there was dragons in Final Fantasy XIV, and they needed to depict that and give us a board wipe. So Crux of Fate, it is. I would say you are almost always going to choose non-dragons with this, unless there's an dragon player that you hate. And then you can just say destroy all dragons, and it's probably the correct move if there's an dragon player at the table. So those are some of the good reprints in the deck. Man, like I said, there is 33 different things in the deck that trigger your Shulta. Most of them are control pieces. There's some really cool, like I said, some synergy with being able to play a card with mana value 3 multiple times. So there's things like Lingering Souls in the deck that is mana value 3. So you get the trigger, and then it will come back with flashback. It's still mana value 3, so you get that trigger again and again and again. Nice. So loving stuff like that. There is an Exsanguinate in the deck as well, just to close out the old game. Sometimes you got to do it. So just like the Mardu deck. Yeah, just like the Mardu deck has the Ultimatum in it, this just has Exsanguinate. So this, I would say, plays like a pretty traditional control deck. You're going to be drawing, doing something on your turn that's going to, get you some value, and then passing the turn and just letting your opponents play and just playing some police as you hopefully find some ways to drain life totals or your own life total to continue to draw cards off of your Shulta, and then just continuing to trigger her second ability to dome the table for 2 and gain yourself 2. This is going to be a grindy deck that I personally would be very excited to play. There's some really cool sort of sub themes in here of expensive cards that get cheaper to play. Like there's an Into the Story in the deck that is a 7 mana spell that costs 3 less if someone has 7 or more cards in their graveyard, and you draw 4 cards off of it. So there's really cool stuff like that. Some ways to improve the deck, some adds that I would say. This one this might be my favorite add to any deck that I've ever reviewed on this show because it is so unbelievably perfect. Like I said, we're playing control, so we already want propaganda, right? There's already a propaganda in the deck as well.
Yes.
They include one. You obviously want that because it triggers Yasholta on its 3 mana value, and then it keeps you safe. It also, really importantly, directs creatures at your opponents, which will help that second ability, your opponent's losing 4 life, not you losing 4 life to draw your cards. So we could be putting a Ghostly Prison in. We could be putting a Sphere of Safety in. But we're going to put a Norn's Annex in this deck.
Yes.
Because it costs 3 and 2 white Phyrexian, which is 4 life.
4 life.
Which means it triggers both halves of Yasholta, and it redirects damage to your opponents via its tax of creatures can't attack you or planeswalkers you control unless their controller pays a white Phyrexian for each of those creatures. So, on their turns, they're faced with either paying a white mana to attack you, which is not going to happen. That is so unbelievably rare to just have a white mana open for each creature. So they can pay 2 life for each creature to attack you, which would deal, it would have an opponent who's lost 4 life that turn if they decide to attack you, or they can just attack your opponents for free, and Yasholta still triggers because somebody else has lost 4 life. All of that on a card that when you cast it triggers both halves of Yasholta. This is the most perfect card that I've ever found for a precon upgrade. So mega excited about Norn's Annex in this deck. I think we need a way to win the game in here. There's a lot of grindiness in here. Something that I would be really looking to put in here is a Painful Quandary as a win condition. Ooh. So it's 5 mana on enchantment. So again, triggers Yasholta. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, that player loses 5 life unless they discard a card. So controls hands, so you're giving your opponents the option to either 2 for 1 themselves for every spell they cast, which won't last long. They will be empty-handed at some point, which is exactly where this deck would like your opponents to be. Or they can take 5 life to cast their spells, which also won't last long, and that triggers Yasholta to let you draw some more cards off of your opponents paying 5 life to cast their spells. So Painful Quandary, I think, is the most perfect of win conditions in here. It also, enchantments are really hard to deal with. So, this is just going to stick. If it doesn't get countered, it's probably going to stay on the board until it wins you the game. Once again, very little protection in this deck. So I think a neat protection spell is, I mentioned this when talking about the Mardu deck. Is a redundant copy of your commander, so that they now have your opponents have to deal with 2 of the same thing. In this case, you can actually just do 2 of the same thing, and you can play Irenicus's Vile Duplication in this deck, which is a 4 mana sorcery that creates a token that's a copy of a creature you control, except the token has flying and isn't legendary. So you can just make a flying copy of Yasholta. Not only is that going to trigger your original Yasholta that will deal 2 damage to the table, you gain 2 life. That now makes it so that you have 2 of those, which means that every subsequent instant or sorcery deals how much? 4 damage to the table, which will trigger Yasholta.
And the other one.
And the other one. So you'll draw 2 cards on each end step off of that. Ridiculous.
Plus doing something like that makes the Rite of Replication in the deck better too, because then you could make make copies,
legendary copies.
Uh-huh.
It's so funny. I toyed around for a second with what does Nanogene Conversion do in this deck, which is a 4 mana, all creatures on the board become a non-legendary copy of a creature. And I lost track once I realized that everybody would be drawing all of those for each creature they control. Every single one of the Yasholta, every creature on the board would draw a card at the end step. So It just
It'd
got
be funny.
Don't include that. So that's where I landed on Irenicus's Vile Duplication. You saw where I was trying to go. It was just make extra copies of your commander. And we had to dial that back to Irenicus's Vile Duplication. Another sort of similar card to the commander, it's not the same, it's sort of similar to the bottom half of Yasholta, is Sig River Cutthroat. So this is hybrid blue black for a 1/3 Merfolk Rogue. It's obviously legendary. At the beginning of each end step, if an opponent lost 3 or more life this turn, you may draw a card. So this is just sort of a redundant trigger for a second ability. And then just for some funsies, this is the Hear Me Out ad. I want to throw a Commandeer in this deck because I can't in good conscience recommend putting all of the free spells in this. Obviously, this is a ridiculous commander for things like Force of Will and Force of Negation and Deadly Rollick and all of these free spells that like trigger once your commander's in play or have additional cost. Commandeer is a 7-mana instant that's $1 that you can exile 2 blue cards from your hand rather than pay the spell's mana cost to gain control of target non-creature spell, and you can choose new targets for it. So if someone plays like a Planeswalker, you can just commandeer it, and then it comes onto your side of the table, and you control it. But this is one of the more, the higher ceiling of the like USD cheap free spells. Because there's obviously like Misdirect, that's like a $10 card. There's like Foil, but that's a bad card. So Commandeer felt like it sat in the right spot for me. It also, it normally is negated by having to exile 2 blue cards from your hand, but with how many cards Yasholta is drawing, I don't think that's really going to be a problem. So that's my Hear Me Out ad, is Commandeer into this deck. I'm personally really excited for Yasholta in more of a bracket 4, bracket 5 sort of CDH range, where it's like stick her down and then just start playing all of the free spells and just get all of the card draw and completely dominate the table with the value that she adds. So this is the one that that I think I would be interested in getting the face commander of the most, not necessarily the entire deck. But it's cool. There's like, I think the inherent problem with the deck is they want to showcase the Final Fantasy stuff, which is a ton of legendary creatures, and they have a face commander that cares about casting non-creature spells. Yeah. So they've done what they can, like I said, with like Hildebrand, where they have a cool legendary creature that also has an adventure on it that allows you to continue to trigger your commander. But I would say on face value, the deck probably needs a lot of work to take out a lot of the legendary creatures that are there for flavor purposes. But man, that's the Esper deck, and it's tight.
It's very cool. Out of 10?
6 out of 10 on face value. Commander is 10 out of 10.
And I think with that, we reach the tail end of our first big batch for Final Fantasy as a whole. This collection of 4. What do you think? Did they nail it?
I think they nailed it. These are really, really cool, really synergistic precons. I'm not a fan of the price tag on them. MSRP or resale, obviously. So I think if you can find these at MSRP, they're cool. 25 new cards per deck is sweet. I think that's where a lot of the value is going to come from as those cards continue to go up in value. If one of them becomes very strong, XYZ, it's just, I think these are going to be really hard decks to find because it's catering to both Final Fantasy people and Magic people, and it's bringing more people into Magic, and it's just a huge IP. So I think they did a great job. Really cool design on a lot of the cards. It feels a lot like the Doctor Who commander decks to me, where it's like, those are in the know, they understand the flavor of the cards, they're sick, but they're also just really well designed cards that fit into other worlds.
Yeah, exactly. Well, like that's a very good comparison as well, because like each deck kind of like in a very similar fashion to these ones where each deck was focused on a particular game. Those Doctor Who ones were focused on a particular era of the show. Mm-hmm. So it had a very there's a shared like similarity there, right? Like if you love this one game, like are you a diehard for 7? Then you've got a full deck that is filled with the theming and characters and an idea. Still focused mechanically, but also is just in that particular setting.
Yeah, man. Good stuff. Any parting thoughts before we sign off?
For the final time, the Final Fantasy sign off.
Yes.
No, I'm yeah, these are gonna be cool. I mean, I guess I'm disappointed in myself that I'm just not familiar with this franchise. And to be fair, I'm probably also not gonna learn. I'm gonna stay out of the loop
Stay
on this one, to
naive.
be honest.
Yeah.
Stay naive. But
I
as
literally
as
today.
game pieces, I think these are cool. There's some very fun designs in here.
I just started playing World of Final Fantasy, which is a sort of spin-off game that deals with it's like Pokemon and Final Fantasy with just odd JRPG elements. And things I've determined so far, goofy as hell. All these games, goofy. This is just it is deeply Japanese. It's so goofy. I see why people love them though. They're so charming. So I'm excited to be playing some Commander with some new Final Fantasy friends as they find their way into the greatest game of all time, which is Magic, of course.
But are you looking for your Final Fantasy friends to play these Commander decks with? Why don't you come join us over at our Discord channel, where we will be playing things like Commander and talking all things Commander decks, Magic cards, Final Fantasy releases as we go into this huge spoiler season for this set, by the way. Just as a whole, come hop in over there, inform us. I would love to be informed a bit more about some of the lore and flavor and sort of the iconography of what these decks are looking to do. So come talk to us about Final Fantasy. I'd love to learn some more.
Oh yeah. You can also find us on Blue Sky. That's at MTG Thoughtcast or at Joseph Thoughtcast or at John Thoughtcast. Or you can send us an email at mtgthoughtcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. This was a long one. If you made it through the whole episode, comment down below. Let us know what you thought. We love you. Thanks for being here. And we'll see you next time on the MTG Thoughtcast. See ya.